I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Happy Halloween week! Today we're talking about the creepiest bosses from each Soulsborne game. Now, I'm not going to deny that having played these games countless times, the initial fear factor or creepiness factor of these encounters are minimized for me. So I'll be putting a lot of focus into a boss's presentation, lore, music, and where applicable, gameplay to determine which from each game earns the spot. If you're interested, I did 2 Halloween videos last year, one on the scariest moments in Soulsborne, and another on the scariest enemy from each Soulsborne game. I'll leave links to both down in the description. Without further ado, the creepiest boss from each Soulsborne game, ranked. Let me know your creepiest bosses down below. For Demon Souls, we have a couple of possibilities. I briefly considered the Leechmonger due to the way it's a creature formed from various leeches, and how disturbing it would be to actually die to such a monstrosity. Leeches are already some of the most horrific animals on the planet, with their ability to suck your blood being quite unsavory. Yet my actual pick ended up being the Old Monk. The Archdemon of Latria. I've gone over the story of the Old Monk and his lore before, yet I never went into the darker side of the golden garb he wears. See, during his banishment from the Tower of Latria, he discovered the head wrappings, and upon wearing them, he was inspired to return to Latria, kill the queen, and enslave the people, which leads to the place you see in-game. Yet those wrappings are, to me, genuinely creepy, because they aren't just some inanimate clothing, they have a parasitic mind of their own. To obtain them in-game, you have to be summoned as the Old Monk boss and then defeat the challenger. I don't think it's that hard to read between the lines here and see how that implies that the wrappings are possessing those being summoned into the fight. The Golden Garb possessed the Old Monk until he was no longer of use, and in the opening cutscene, upon ascending the Old Monk's tower for the first time, we see the clothing fully abandon him as this skeleton, selecting a new host. Cursed items are creepy in their own right, but the rather disturbing shape of the head wrap, as well as the way it so carelessly discarded its former host, and the way it weaponizes actual multiplayer gameplay with its lore, is just so deliciously creepy. For Dark Souls, I was torn between 3 different fights, all from the base game. The 4 Kings were in contention purely for their arena, the Abyss, where all you can see are their forms as they spawn in among the endless darkness. Their designs being so sleek, silvery, like corrupted dark elves, is also a stark contrast to the rest of the creatures in Dark Souls, but it felt a bit surface level for me. Gaping Dragon was also a runner-up for a few factors. The sheer shock of encountering a dragon in the early game when the rest of the bosses have been fairly standard mythological creatures was a hell of a wake-up call, and the sheer disturbing nature of its design, a dragon who was so hungry it began to develop teeth along its entire being, is horrifying as fuck. Yet, I've gotta say it, my man Pinwheel is the creepiest boss in Dark Souls. The opening cutscene with the slow reveal of Pinwheel's form, the 3 different masks that shudder and shake in unison, and the fantastic sound design elicit a very uncomfortable response in the player. The music of the fight, while you won't hear it for long, is one of the darker themes in Dark Souls, and is a personal favourite of mine. Give it a listen one day and you'll see how much of a creepy banger Pinwheel has for a boss track. But of course, the lore is what brings Pinwheel this spot. He's a grieving husband and father, a man who once lost everything. His wife and his child were killed, leading him to steal the right of kindling from Nito in an attempt to bring them back through necromancy. But as many of us know, it went wrong. Pinwheel, as we know it, was birthed as the father, the mother, and the child were all fused into the same body. 2 spirits brought back unwillingly, forced to reside while the father works to fix his mistakes. Yet he never does. He fails at every opportunity, trying to create copies of himself, yet being unable to give his wife and child their own consciousness. Necromancy is always rife with creepy undertones, yet the genuine tragedy of Pinwheel is heartbreakingly cruel. He just wanted his family back, and now he has his family on his back. For Dark Souls 2, it's another case where there aren't many overly creepy bosses. I could have thrown Freya on here because I'm scared of spiders, but ultimately she's just a massive arachnid guard dog for her master's private study. The Rotten could have landed here if it wasn't for the overly positive nature of his lore. He accepts all things that land in his gulch and they become part of him. Creepy design though. The Lost Sinner could have made it with the theme of parasitic possession and the nature of torturing oneself for committing a sin. However, I want to pick the Demon of Song. Bit of a weird choice, but hear me out. Developing a taste for human flesh, the Demon of Song was locked within the Shrine of Amarna and appeased by the ancient rituals of the priestesses that used to be found within. When they all hollowed away or died, the Demon of Song found itself set free, where it began to feed on any travelers who entered. To do this, he steals the voice of the Milfanito we find outside his boss door, becoming a rather disturbing siren-like creature, and placing himself right before the entrance to the undead crypt. It's the perfect place to trap any travelers coming through. And while not shown in the gameplay per se, you can assume the boss is slowly following the player as you go through the shrine. What's creepier than being stalked? His body also fits our themes, as he resides within the corpse of a giant frog. It's why you can't damage him when you attack his outer body, because that's not actually a part of the demon, it's the frog corpse. All we see of the Demon of Song are his face and those lanky arms, which makes me wonder what else was potentially laying within the frog. However, the Demon of Song may just have deeper lore than we first thought, as when you defeat this boss, you get what is the key to the Embedded, which can be used on a creature chained up against a door within Drangleic Castle, and you do this to save a Milfanito. But the actual creature is what I want to focus on with this theory. The Embedded could never resist the temptation of flesh, the same as the Demon of Song, and I theorize they are one and the same. In the same way that King Vendrick left his soul within the Shrine of Amarna, the Embedded left his soul within the key to the Embedded, yet his soul's desire for human flesh ultimately gave birth to the Demon of Song. So when he allows himself to be chained to the door in Drangleic, it's with the knowledge that he will become a husk of his former self in the same way as King Vendrick. Without his soul, he's just a body. And the gamble, I guess, was that one day someone would slay his wicked desires and use the sword obtained to finish him off. Bet you didn't think the Demon of Song had the potential for some interesting lore, did ya? For Bloodborne, I wanted to try veering away from the cosmic horror, and instead focus on the beasts with this entry. Because look, I could talk about the omnipotent creepiness of being stalked by amygdalas across the whole game, or the way the moon presence guides your hand at every turn, but I do find that some of the beast bosses get overshadowed, despite also having rather disturbing lore implications. Case in point, let's talk about Blood-Starved Beast. There are a handful of creatures in Bloodborne that make me feel viscerally uncomfortable, and when I first faced this boss, I couldn't put my finger on why it hit me in such a way. It has extremely fast movement, can poison you with its tainted ashen blood, and is downright ferocious in its protection of the church you find it in. Then it hits. The reveal that the cloak that covers its form is actually its own back skin, which has been skinned off and drained of blood, is downright horrific. Now, it's not clear whether this creature was a denizen of Old Yharnam or a blood saint from the Healing Church, but it's incredibly clear that whatever the case, this creature was there the night Old Yharnam burned to the ground, and now they all wish to simply be left alone. Yet the skinning of the beast had to have happened before this, right? And that's what makes this so creepy to me. Because potentially, through ritualistic actions, this creature was drained of its blood and skinned alive for reasons unknown to us, though we can speculate that its blood was being used to help cure the Ashen illness. The fact that someone willingly agreed to become this beast and this treatment, to me, that is the epitome of what's creepy and disturbing about Blood-Starved, and I think it's gonna stay with me for a while. These are some creepy bosses, and here is a creepy video message. I'm trying to reach 30,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If you want to try and help us support that goal, consider parrying that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. Or you can go the extra mile and become a channel member. It costs $4.99 a month, it gets you early access to future videos, and soon, I really hope soon, I'll be able to give some special extra perks for those of you channel members. I know I keep promising it, it will happen, we're just getting settled in our new house. So, thank you very much for watching. Let's get back to the creepiness with another boss from Dark Souls 3. For Dark Souls 3, we have significantly less options because a majority of the bosses here veer more into traditional fantasy, and most of them don't have a creepy ambiance or atmosphere or lore to focus on. Dark Eater Midir was a maybe, but I think there's only so much I can say about a guardian of the ringed city who fell to the darkness. The dancer possibly, but the creepy thing comes from her music and the way she moves, and I don't know, there's just not enough there. So let's pick the obvious boss, High Lord Woedenaz. Easily the most deranged creature on today's list, Woedenaz conquered Karthus of the Sands and became its High Lord, even stripping his trademark armlets and holy sword from the corpses of clerics to demean the concept of religion in his land. But his desire to outlive and become the last of the dead caused him to slaughter his entire empire, burying them all within the catacombs of Karthus. And upon reanimating his own corpse via necromancy, his plan was seemingly complete. That is, until the abyss opened within the catacombs, swallowing High Lord Woedenaz inside. And this is where we find him in-game. His personality shifts, constantly climbing his way from the darkness, his 3 armlets providing him stability and safety within the all-encompassing dark, as he tried to pray to the gods for forgiveness after demeaning their religion. Just the fact that his fight begins with a jump scare is worth putting him on this list, but the way he tries to drag you down into the abyss, and the way we're warped to an entirely unique arena for this fight, is actually really creepy. I love that this arena explains why the Abyss Watchers are located so close to the catacombs, being that they combated the Abyss here, and you could even make the case they were the ones to seal Woedenaz away within the artifact at the catacombs' end. That is speculation, though. Seeing Woedenaz, an all-powerful skeletal lord, fall victim to the Abyss, sliding into the darkness, practically begging for his undead life, was both satisfying and a little harrowing. Just this random pocket of darkness within a relatively tame game is what makes this fight feel so creepy to me. For Sekiro, this is the easiest entry in the list, because while I can't talk about the Headless as I focused on them in last year's Halloween video, there is one boss that hits all the creepy notes, and it doesn't even need any lore. It's the Headless Ape from the Sunken Valley. Not the Guardian Ape, his first phase isn't important to this video, but that second phase is a true masterclass in what makes a genuinely creepy boss fight. The ape, like many of the creatures in Sekiro, is one of the infested, creatures who cannot die due to the immortal centipedes living inside them. Because we slice off the ape's head, severing its brain from its body, the centipede has no choice but to take complete control of his host. And thus we get one of the creepiest fights in a Soulsborne game, having the boss go from this animalistic moveset that we can recognize because we all know how a monkey moves, to seeing the ape take on this insectoid movement is such a mindfuck. It takes our knowledge and subverts what we know as humans to create something where we think, that ain't right. I think what's most horrifying about this is the way the insect puppeteers the corpse of the ape. Every attack is like something's being lifted by a marionette, and the way it can come crashing down is like a puppet's strings being cut. Its visceral screech that builds up terror, its calculated movements, it's just plain wrong, and I love it. There's no lore that makes this any creepier, it's just the boss itself and the brilliant design that went into it. Surprise! I'm hitting you with an extra entry today from Lies of P. It came out a year ago, I'm actually playing it again with my partner, and I really just wanted to talk about the game. That being said, spoilers, I'm going to be discussing the final boss of the game, so check the description for timestamps so you can skip to the Elden Ring segment. I'll give you 5 seconds and then we will move on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's talk about the nameless puppet, shall we? The true final boss of Lies of P, this is Geppetto's true goal and our final obstacle if we wish to go for the good ending. It's revealed that P has the ergo of Geppetto's dead son within him, and by giving our heart to Geppetto, Carlo can be revived. Refusing forces us to fight the puppet, but all is not as it seems. This puppet's first phase has it being controlled by Geppetto, who marionettes it around in an attempt to kill us. But why does Geppetto need to control this puppet? Why is it not acting of its own volition? Because the nameless puppet is more than just a machine. It's the first puppet Geppetto created to house the P organ, but its ergo was too destructive, hence why he has to control it himself. But more than that, there is another dark twisted secret that lies beneath. The torso of this puppet is distinctly human. It bleeds red blood down its face. I didn't even realize this on my first playthrough, but this is a puppet created with the corpse of Geppetto's child, Carlo. A horrifying revelation that shows just how desperate the father was to regain his lost son. It's a nameless puppet versus a nameless puppet. We haven't been given a name throughout the game, never referred to aside from Stalker or Kind One. The fans are the ones calling him P. But by defeating the nameless puppet, and through Geppetto's final sacrifice, we can accept that we are now Carlo, defeating the puppet once and for all. It always comes back to fucking necromancy with these games, I swear, but the fact we're literally fighting the corpse of our previous self is so metal, I couldn't not include it in today's video. Anyway, back to the Soulsborne. Finally, for Elden Ring, it's Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame. He practically inspired this list with how downright horror-focused the entire Abyssal Woods ended up being during the DLC. He has aspects of our previous entries, but blends them together to create something truly unique. He's got the rather disturbing lore, with his Nanaya manipulating him into enduring so that Midra would become worthy of the Frenzied Flame. Something people didn't catch when the DLC initially launched. We actually thought Nanaya was a good person, yet that subtle smile in her painting with Midra tells us otherwise. This man was manipulated into becoming the Lord, even warning the Tarnished to stay away as he held back the madness for as long as he could. Then the cutscene happens, and we see the most disturbing imagery as Midra can no longer endure, decapitating himself by removing the sword from his body, which in turn creates the Lord of Frenzied Flame. But the creepiness doesn't stop there, for Midra's moveset is like the Headless Ape, designed to really throw you off with a lot of very unnatural timings and odd movement. The way he gracefully slides through the air, able to make distance incredibly quickly, the dance-like energy he has, it's ethereal and otherworldly. While most major bosses in this game attempt to destroy you as quickly as possible, Midra takes his time playing with you, toying with your abilities, before unleashing the flames hidden inside. His music atmospherically works so well, making you feel uncomfortable and out of place. His frenzied attacks leave you useless if you let it build up, and yet he still goes at his own rhythm. There's nothing about Midra's fight that feels normal, nothing that feels familiar or comforting. It's probably the most horror-focused a fight has been in a very long time, and I can't help but think back to the old monk in Demon's Souls where we started this video, and how Midra has a lot of similarities to him, even down to the color palettes. FromSoft has come incredibly far in such a short time, and I would love to really see them try and create a true horror game experience. Bloodborne leans into horror elements, but I just know they have so much more to give, and sticking to the fantasy genre just doesn't let them go that far. Bring us more creepy shit, FromSoft. You know we want it. And that's my list. Which creepy bosses were your favorites? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. My social medias are on screen now. Feel free to follow me if you feel comfortable. I recommend my Twitter or my Discord, or who knows, maybe even my Blue Sky. I'm using it again. Ooh. A massive shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing, and I'll see you next time for another video. Adios.